In this section, we're going to talk about how to measure large woody debris. So woody debris is something that is included in pretty much every habitat assessment protocol because it's so important for salmon habitat. And I want to make a distinction here. The reason why we're specifically calling it large woody debris is because it's debris, wood, that's large enough to be channel forming. So that means it's large enough to change the direction of the water flow so that it scours certain areas or slows down the water. We don't talk about twigs, tiny pieces of wood in this category because although smaller pieces of wood, branches, things like that are important in terms of providing nutrients and also providing places for fish to hide under, they're not channel forming. So you're not going to get a pool that's scoured away because you got a couple twigs in the water. So here we're talking about specifically woody debris that's large enough to actually change the channel. And so the reason why large woody debris is so important is because it provides a lot of complexity to your river system and then, like I said, is actually channel forming. So this is an overhead picture here of some engineered log jams. So a lot of woody debris is natural, but sometimes they go in and place log jams in the river for restoration. Serves the same purpose. What you can see here is that they've placed log jams on opposite sides of the river. Looks like the river is flowing, I don't know, I think from bottom to your top of screen. And what would happen here is as the river is flowing from bottom to top, it's going to hit these log jams and you're going to get scouring on the downstream side of it. So you're going to get a pool that's being formed here, here, and here. So large woody debris is channel forming because when that water hits those pieces of wood, it changes the direction of the water flow. That causes scouring, which scours out pools, which is really great salmon habitat. Large woody debris is also important because during high flood events, like shown here on the bottom right, they're a way that they stop water velocity and slow it down. So if you don't have any channel complexity, don't have woody debris in your system, that water is just going to rip downstream. That's going to cause a lot of erosion, a lot of problems surrounding that. When you have nice woody debris like this, nice log jams, when the water hits those log jams, it's going to slow the water down, and that's going to decrease the negative impacts of those flood events. So that's why woody debris is so important. So when you're measuring woody debris, you're going to be walking upstream and measuring pieces of woody debris that are within what's called the bankful channel or bankful prison. So you can picture it like you have your water surface here, but usually when you're sampling your site, you're not sampling it at bankful flow. So bankful is something that happens every 1 to 2 years. It's usually not what you're sampling at. So you want to kind of picture what your site would look like if it was at bankful flow. So if the water was all the way up to bankful, would a piece of woody debris be within that bankful channel or would it not? In these examples here, this one, for example, would count as with this one because although they barely touch the water surface, they're within this bankful channel. So we're going to count all pieces of woody debris that are within this bankful channel that also meet our size requirement. So I'll go over this in the video that follows, but the size requirement for our protocol is that we need a B axis diameter of greater than 10 centimeters, as well as greater than 1 meter in length. So again, I'll go over that in a video here. So that's what you guys are going to be measuring. In addition to measuring pieces of woody debris, you're also going to be recording what channel unit they're in. So for example, if it's in unit 1, which is a pool, you would write unit 1. And if a piece of woody debris is bridging 2 channel units, you just want to put the woody debris in whatever channel unit it's has the most in. So if it's 75% in channel unit 2, assign it to channel unit 2. For data collection, I've linked to an example of a data collection spreadsheet, which is somewhere in my mess here. Where is it? I will find it. Oh, here it is. So this is an example of a data sheet that you can use, but you don't necessarily have to print this out. You can also just kind of use this as a template. So it has up to 44 pieces of woody debris. You're measuring the diameter and the length. You're also attributing it to the unit. So unit number is the channel unit. But you'll notice here where it says estimate or measure, you're actually not going to be physically measuring every piece of woody debris. You're going to be doing a combination of measuring and estimating. This is really common for habitat assessment protocols because sometimes there's hundreds and hundreds of pieces of woody debris at a site. It would take forever to measure every piece. We don't need that amount of detailed information. However, most habitat protocols don't just have you estimate because some people are really bad at estimating lengths, and so if you get a technician that has not very good spatial awareness, they might throw the entire survey off. So usually what they do is a combo. In our protocol, you guys are going to measure the first 5 pieces of wood, and then you're going to estimate pieces 6 through 9, and you're going to measure every 5th piece after that. So for example, you would measure piece 10, estimate 11 through 14, and then measure piece 15. The reason why it's set up like this is because it allows us to have some time-saving advantages to estimating woody debris diameters and lengths, but it still kind of keeps you on track and calibrates you by having you measure every few pieces because then if you're like really off and you go to measure it, it kind of makes you realize how off you are and you can adjust accordingly. So that's the kind of process there. You guys are going to be walking upstream. You're going to follow this and either estimate or measure, depending on what it says, take the diameter and length, as well as attributing it to a channel unit.
So when we're looking at measuring woody debris, we want to make sure to measure woody debris that's in the active bank pull channel. That means that if you establish bank pull, which is about right there, and basically just picture where the water would be at during bank pull. If the piece of wood is within that bank pull channel, then you can count it. If it's up on the banks, like that piece up there, we would not count that. It's not actively influencing the riverbed. For pieces like this that are partially in the channel and partially outside the channel, we would still count those. So to take the measurements for woody debris, you want to use your depth rod and take the length. So just start at the end of the wood, even if it's underwater, and you want to take the entire length of your piece of woody debris. For the diameter, you want to take the midpoint diameter. So for this, you're just going to walk carefully so I don't destroy my phone. And you're going to take the diameter at the midpoint of the piece of woody debris. And that's what you're going to record for your woody debris measurements. When we're looking at large woody debris, we need to have minimum size requirements. We need this in order to prevent ourselves from measuring like a bazillion pieces. So our size measurements are they need to be at least 1 meter long and at least 0.1 meters wide. So that's our minimum length and our minimum width. If our piece of woody debris does not meet either the minimum length or the minimum width, we ignore it. So we can see upstream, there's a piece of woody debris. It's quite long, it's definitely wide enough. That's a piece of woody debris that we would count. So we would definitely measure that, take the width, and record that. Here on the bank, I have 2 pieces of woody debris, one of which does count and one of which does not count. So here we have what's essentially a twig. We would not count this. It does not meet the minimum width requirement, so we can just ignore it. Again, these are not like channel shaping pieces of wood. If you have this twig in the water, it's not like it's going to scour out a pool. It definitely contributes to the habitat, but it's not something that we're like particularly interested in terms of woody debris forming channels and stuff like that. This one, which I very conveniently just found, is a great example of a piece of woody debris that technically qualifies according to our protocol. And here's why. There are 3 axes to both pieces of wood and also rocks as well. So when we're covering the axes, we have the A axis here, which is the long axis, the C axis, which is the skinniest one, and then the B axis, which is the middle one. When we're measuring width, we're measuring on the B axis. So technically, because this piece of wood is 1 meter long and it's greater than 0.1 meters wide, it technically qualifies as a qualifying piece of woody debris. You would measure this. I know it seems like, this would never like scour a channel, but again, protocols, we have to have rules, standardization, so this would actually count under our protocol, whereas this would not. So sometimes you're not going to be able to measure a piece of woody debris. Here's a piece of woody debris that qualifies and it goes way up in the trees. So in this one, you would just estimate it. So if there's ever a piece of woody debris that you can't safely measure, you want to just estimate it. However, I will emphasize safely. Just because it's inconvenient and it's in a bunch of sticker bushes, you can still measure that. Just don't go crawling up trees in order to measure it. If you're looking at a piece of woody debris like this, where part of it is stuck in the bank or stuck in the riverbed, you can't see the other half of it, you can see this part that comes out right here, but you can't know for sure if these are all the same piece of wood, if they're the same piece of wood or they're technically separate pieces of wood. So according to our protocol, we would measure these separately. This would be one piece of woody debris, and this would be another piece of woody debris. And again, that's because we can't just make the assumption that they're actually connected here. In situations like this, you just record what you can see. So you want to measure the length from here to where you can't see it anymore, and you would measure the width along the midpoint of what you can see and just leave it at that.
Last thing I want to touch on here are some specifics that I didn't necessarily see at my site when I was doing the demo. One is that for woody debris, we're counting pieces of dead woody debris. So if it's a live tree that's, has roots in the river system, like on the bank, or it's a live tree that's like overhanging your river, you wouldn't want to count that. You're only counting dead trees. So dead trees that look like this, root wads, stumps also count as woody debris as well. And the only kind of exception to that dead wood thing is that if there's a piece of woody debris that has fallen into the river, like it's a tree that fell over, and it still has green leaves on it, but it's like gonna die, you can still count that. So like newly fallen trees still count, because for all intents and purposes, like they're pretty much ecologically dead because they're going to die and they're going to become woody debris. So you can count something like this, that even though it still has green leaves on it, because it's completely blown over and it's going to die soon. So some other specifics I didn't get to or I didn't see at my site is root wads. So if you have a root wad, you're going to measure the full length from the top to the bottom of the roots. But for the diameter, you're just going to look at the actual trunk here. So the root collar is where the trunk meets the roots. And you're going to take the diameter at the midpoint of the actual stump itself. So don't take the midpoint of the roots. It just gets too difficult. There's also some pieces down here for if you come up with a piece of woody debris that you can't see all of it you're just going to take measurements of whatever you can see, even if it's embedded in the stream bank, for example. And lastly, if you get to a piece of woody debris that's cracked or broken, you would consider it one piece if the two pieces are attached. But if they're broken completely, even if you could tell that they were originally the same piece of wood, you would count those as separate pieces of wood. Again, these seem like really tiny specific things, but most of habitat assessment is being able to follow a protocol. So we have to have rules like this that are specific in order to make sure that we're collecting data that's comparable year after year and between sites. For you guys, for your assessment, you guys are going to be walking upstream and measuring / estimating woody debris in your site. Because you guys have shortened sites, there's a chance that you might not have any woody debris in your site. And if you don't, that's okay. For your assessment, for your video assessment, I'd like you guys to find at least one piece of woody debris that qualifies and one piece of woody debris that does not qualify at a minimum. Even if you have to look up or downstream of your site, still find at least that one piece of woody debris that qualifies and one piece that doesn't.